Just to let you guys know that my gameplay is going to be just a tad rusty. It has been a little bit since I've actually played Garden Warfare 2, so just be warned. Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. I am back at it with another video, specifically about Garden Warfare 2, which is probably the game I have the least amount of analysis videos on. At the same time though, what hasn't already been said about this game that needs to be said more? Because, like, all the strategies, all the glitches, pretty much everything's been discovered and widely talked about enough by now. But that's one of the reasons why this isn't going to be my typical type of analysis video. Rather than giving, stating facts and such, I want to instead focus on talking about characters that I personally enjoy playing. Obviously, these are going to be hot takes, since saying that I love playing Toxic Brains or I love playing Electro-P, should be a given. Like, you like playing them because they're either really good or really fun. But there are other characters in this game that aren't widely talked about enough that I actually really enjoy playing. This video, for the most part, isn't really going to be stating, objective fact. It's going to be a whole lot more slower paced due to the fact that I don't really need to try and convince anybody why I love playing this character. Rather, I'm just telling everybody why I like them. There's no need to try and convince somebody why a bad character is good, because, let's be honest, there are characters in this game that regardless of what anybody says, there's always going to be someone that hates them, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you hate playing a certain character, you shouldn't be told by anyone else that that character is actually secretly good. I'm just here to state that I like the character and, why I like them. So, if you come at me in the comment section saying that my take is wrong, here's why, you've already lost your argument, because I'm just here to talk about my opinions and my opinions only, not to try and convince anyone of anything. However, if you do want to, ask questions about something, or just state you don't agree with me, that's totally fine, because that's sort of the whole point of having an opinion. I just don't really want to get into any arguments. That is, unless the argument is actually going to, have sources be cited and, not just be spouting nonsense at each other, because most arguments on the internet are usually just that. But anyways, let's actually move on to the hot takes, shall we? So let's move on to the first character of our hot takes, which would be Captain Shockbite. Now, I know what people are going to say. I generally don't think Shockbite is that bad of a character. He has splash damage and an incredibly fast fire rate, as well as being generally good overall when it comes to ammo consumption, which means that he's actually really good for newer players and players that have a bit of trouble aiming. Now, I myself prefer the regular pirate over Shockbite. I would assume most people do. But just because I prefer the regular pirate doesn't mean that Shockbite is actually all that bad of a character. I do think he's better than most pirates, actually, and would even argue that he's on par with the regular pirate. To be honest, the only thing I don't like about Captain Shockbite is the fact that when sniping, he's a little slow. He definitely can't shoot as fast as the regular pirate, unfortunately, which means that most of the time, for really good sniper players, he's a downgrade because, sniping faster is better. But just because I don't like this downside very much, and also the fact that I prefer the regular pirate over Shockbite, does not mean that Shockbite is a bad character. And really, I only prefer Shockbite a little bit less. I frankly believe that they're pretty much on the same par with each other, but you almost never see anyone talk about Shockbite, which kinda sucks, because like I said, he's a pretty good character. Fast fire rate, alright damage, and splash damage. You can't really go wrong with a character that has splash damage unless the splash damage is the same as Pylon Imp or Commando Corns. Speaking of Commando Corn, he's actually the second character I want to talk about. Now, I know that his splash is absolutely horrible, both its radius and its damage, but I've never really thought of Commando Corn as the splash damage Corn, which was obviously what PopCap was trying to go for. Now, does that mean he's technically a bad character? No. PopCap obviously tried with something and it just didn't really work out that well. But what they did manage to achieve with Commando Corn is great. Every kill with him feels satisfying, and his damage output, while being not as good as the regular Corn or Party Corns, is still really, really good. And his legendary mode is also really, really good. Dealing enough damage to basically kill anything without having to actually reload, mixed with the damage resistance and the more damage that he does, makes him extremely powerful. Now, I will admit it's not as good as Iron Mode or Toxic Overload, but something tells me that neither one of those can really be beaten in power, especially considering the fact that both of those modes are just straight up overpowered, whereas Commando Corns feels a little bit more balanced, like actually rewarding for doing lots of hard work. Which is probably why he doesn't actually get too much talk about him, because he's actually a semi-balanced legendary character. But yeah, everything about him feels smooth, he can do good damage at a distance, he's just overall really good. Yeah, sure, he has his flaws, just like every character that's going to be on this list, but that's sort of the whole point. If I only talked about characters on this list that were really good and didn't have any weaknesses, there would be no reason to make this video. But yeah, he is consistently good, he's got a pretty good legendary mode, he's a Corn, he feels fun to play. That's the most important part. Not only is he decent, but he also feels fun to play. He feels strong, even if he isn't as strong as the other Corns. And that's what I love about him so much. Also, fun fact about Corn, I actually really wanted him more than any other legendary character, and the first legendary piece I ever got was of him. And then the last legendary piece I ever got was of him. I literally got a piece of him for any other character, and then I actually unlocked him after I unlocked every other character. Kinda funny, actually. But yeah, Commando Corn is good. There's not really too much I have to say about him in that regard. He just needs more people to be talking about him. What's funny is that I see more people actively choosing to play Mob Cop over Commando Corn. Since we're on the subject of Corn, there's actually another one that I want to talk about, that being Barbecue Corn. You see, Barbecue Corn is in this weird state. He's sort of like the Adopt Me of Garden Warfare 2 characters. You see tons of people playing him, but nobody actually talks about him. And when people do talk about him, it's mostly negative. And I'm here to say that Barbecue Corn isn't as bad as people perceive him to be. If he was just a Corn that had less damage and, less ammo and did fire damage, yes, I would 100% agree. He is terrible. But what pushes him from, absolutely terrible to just okay, which is what I think he is his fire rate and his incredible accuracy. Plus, he suffers from no damage fall-off. Putting all these three gimmicks together actually make Barbecue Corn better than most people give him credit for. Sure, was he a whole lot better back then? Yes. Do I consider the stock Corn and Party Corn to be better? Also yes. But that doesn't mean that he isn't decent. Being able to do a consistent amount of damage fast at pretty much any range, while also having the fire chip damage, is actually really good. And that's the thing, is that it is incredibly difficult to miss a shot while playing as him, and you don't really suffer from bullet spread because bullet spread is practically non-existent on him because of his amazing accuracy. Putting all these things together, he's really good at any range. He's a really good chip damage character, he's really good on his own. Fire damage is just OP in this game. Like, how many times do you actually see somebody dealing with fire damage properly? Like, most of the time, it's a scientist that needs to be the one to deal with the fire damage, but we all know that scientists don't bother helping their teammates. So Barbecue Corn is really, really good in my opinion. He's definitely not as good as Stock, or Commando, or Party, but he's decent enough to be considered a good character in my opinion, and that's all that really matters. Plus, he's fun to play. After all, fire characters can be incredibly annoying to deal with if you know how to use them properly. Speaking of fire characters, there's actually one I want to talk about, that being the welder. Now, some people could argue that barbecue corn isn't that good, and that his fire damage doesn't make up for the lack of damage you can do as regular corn. But the same cannot be said for the welder. The amount of damage he can do, along with chip damage and splash damage combined, are all really good. And it's crazy to think that I'll see him like once every few games and that's it. But let me explain everything I like about the welder. So, for starters, he has splash damage and he does fire damage, so basically, you're doing a little bit more than the amount of damage you would usually do, even if you only hit him once. Even if you only graze him, you don't actually have to physically hit him, which I think is the most important part. You don't have to actually physically hit anybody to do good damage to them. Not only that, but his damage is also really good despite being a fire character, because compare him to the regular engineer. The regular engineer does 40 damage and has 20 splash damage. Well, the welder can do 30 splash damage with the added fire effect. So basically 10 splash damage, 20 fire damage. But not only that, but he can also do 25 direct damage. 25 direct damage is a little bit more than half of the stock engineer's damage output with a direct hit. Which, all things considered, is not that bad compared to, things like barbecue corn. Barbecue corn got way shorter end of the stick, all things considered. Whereas, engineer only does slightly more than half, which is way better on his end. But not only that, much like barbecue corn, the welder has a bunch of other little things to help him out a little bit. He has a little bit more ammo, allowing him to shoot more. He also shoots his projectiles faster. He has a faster fire rate, which is really good when you do less damage. And to top everything off, his projectiles don't disappear much like how the regular engineers do, which means that you can use him at longer ranges. I think a lot of people think that the welder is generally good, but the problem is that nobody really plays him. Probably due to the fact that he's a somewhat boring playstyle, and unlike scientists, sunflowers actually try to help their teammates. But yeah, the welder is really good for what he does. I would say that he's not really too underrated. Like, this isn't really much of a hot take, because people do use him sometimes, but definitely not enough. So while he isn't too underrated, he's still partially underrated in a sense. But you want to know who is underrated? The landscaper. Say what you want about this dude, but I absolutely love him, and his gimmick is so simple and easy to understand. He does less damage overall, but his fire rate is insane. And while high amounts of damage are really good in their own right, DPS is what matters the most in close to mid-range, which is where the landscaper shines. You can send characters back to the dirt so fast with this character as long as you're decent with aiming, and that's what I love so much about him, because he's got a skill ceiling and is also really good. And there are times when he shines that the regular engineer just doesn't, like when it comes to killing certain characters as fast as possible. Now, unfortunately, this gameplay doesn't really show a whole lot of good aiming skills, unfortunately, but you get what I mean. The landscaper is incredibly underrated and generally one of the most fun engineers in the whole game. And if you aren't playing him, you definitely should be, because there are very few engineers that are this fun to play while also being this good. However, not every character that I like is underrated. Some of them are just plain bad. Like, for example, Pylon Imp. Now, you may be wondering why I like playing this character, despite calling him bad. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that he isn't on the worst end of the imps, but the truth is that the way that I like playing Imp is that I'm generally more like close range type when it comes to how I fight, and Pylon Imp is able to fight close range pretty well. Because the thing is that with most imps you need to get like right up on the enemy's face, like melee range, whereas Pylon Imp is better for short to mid range. Now, I'm not saying I don't like fighting characters close range, and sometimes I do like fighting them in melee range, But there's just like this subconscious thing in my brain that tells me to fight close range, and I don't really know why. Maybe it's just the types of games I play, maybe it's just the mindset I've had for the past few years or something. I'm not entirely sure. But all I know is that I like fighting characters close ranged a good chunk of the time, and Pylon them can sort of fulfill that role. Plus his damage isn't really all that bad. And there's the mech glitch, where you can use both the bling mech and the regular mech separately, basically allowing you to have two mechs at once. So while he may have a worse mech, an accidental glitch subconsciously makes him better, or at least better than Shrimp. I would say he's more fun than Shrimp, but I can understand why some people don't like him very much. But he's not the only one that's considered bad by a good chunk of the community. There's also Toxic Citron. Now, I'm not gonna try and convince everybody that Toxic Citron is secretly underrated and is actually a really good character. Yeah, I know he's bad. But when it comes between him and Electro Citron, I usually prefer playing Electro Citron less. Because the thing about Toxic Citron and Electro Citron is that they're both mediocre characters, but Toxic Citron doesn't require skill. And you see, when a character doesn't require skill, but they're bad, they're just, mediocre and that's it. But when a character requires skill, but is kind of bad, they're not really the best. And to be honest, Toxic Citron is just really good at chip damage. Yeah, he sucks at a lot of other things, but he isn't like the absolute worst character to ever exist. All things considered, he's just okay. But the best way to probably explain it is to explain why I'm not really the biggest fan of Electro Citron, so let's get into that. So the reason why I'm not really the biggest fan of Electro Citron is because his gimmick isn't really all that good. Like the whole electric thing. And his second gimmick of being a charge character, while not necessarily being the worst, is arguably worse compared to other charge characters. Like, there are charge characters that can do more damage than him while using less ammo. And that's why he's just sort of on the more mediocre side, all things considered. It's one of the reasons why I'm not really the biggest fan playing him. Now, I will admit that Electro Citron has his place. He's definitely not worthless. I could definitely see somebody with a lot of skill being able to utilize him properly. But like I said, the problem is both skill and fun. He's got an incredibly high skill ceiling, and he's just not very fun for me. And when compared to other characters, he's sort of lacking, which is why I'm not really the biggest fan of him. So while Toxic Citron may be worse from an objective standpoint, he's better because he's easier to grasp. And for me personally, that's just why I don't really like him too much. He's got too many things that I don't like about him, and a couple of things I do like about him. So in general, he's just kind of okay. You wanna know what is a good Citron though, that doesn't get talked about enough? Frozen Citron. Despite basically having the attributes of the Arctic Trooper, Frozen Citron gets almost none of the actual praise, and it's really confusing to me because he's a really good character. He sacrifices a very, and I mean very small amount of damage, like I think 2 points of damage at most, for the ability to freeze characters. And keep in mind that he has a stun and an ability that can be used to block damage, as well as really good mobility. And what makes it even better is that since he's a Citron, he can actually freeze from crazy distances, and since he's shooting a constant beam, it's way easier to freeze characters that way. It's really confusing why nobody likes playing him. The only semi-good argument I've heard anybody say about why he's less played compared to Arctic Trooper is because Arctic Trooper's insta-kill can be used after freezing a character, and because he freezes faster, but I generally don't see freezing somebody a little bit slower to be the be-all end-all. Like, he's just, considering the fact that he's almost never played at all, it's really perplexing to me. Frankly, if there's any character on this list that really should be played more, it's him and the next character that I'm going to be talking about. And said next character is Frost Rose. To be honest, she's exactly like Frozen Citron. She sacrifices a little bit of damage for, honestly, some really good abilities, like being a charged character, and of course being able to freeze. And I don't think people realize just how powerful being able to freeze as well as having a charge gimmick actually is. Getting a hit with a fully charged shot, all you have to do is just land a couple more homing shots with your wand of freezing, and boom, they're instantly frozen. You can freeze characters, and I'm not joking when I say this, faster than you can with Arctic Trooper if you land a fully charged shot, then proceed to spam shots using cross throws. And I never see anybody talking about this. Like, she's legit, in my opinion, the best Rose in the game, and I know that some people are going to say Necros is better, but she's also really good. Like, it barely requires anything to freeze somebody. Look at how fast I freeze this mech in this clip. It barely required anything. He was frozen before he started launching his missiles. And how long was I shooting at him? Barely. That's just how strong Frost Rose is when you take into account her charge shots. Not to mention the fact that her charge shots do really good in damage. They do 50 damage, and you don't even have to land a direct hit with that damage. When you play something like Future Cactus, or Mystic Flower, or Plasma Pea, if you want to make the most out of your damage, you want to hit them directly. But the same cannot be said for Frost Rose, because she does 50 in splash damage and in direct hit damage. You don't have to be accurate with her. And, she also has a homing gimmick, of which kind of failed me in this part of the clip here. But yeah, she's really, really good, and she's really, really fun, and can be really, really annoying. And yet I see more people playing Fire Rose. Not to mention that when compared to Electro Citron, her ammo consumption when using fully charged shots is not nearly as bad. It only requires 4 for a fully charged shot, which means you can shoot 5 fully charged shots without having to reload. I'm just saying that's really good. Not as good as Plasma Pea, but no charged character is as good as Plasma Pea because Plasma Pea is straight up broken. Her first charged shot is also pretty good. It only requires 2 ammo consumption and does 33 damage. All things considered, it's not all that bad as like a follow-up. It's definitely not the best, but it's not all that bad. But yeah, all things considered, Frost Rose is really underrated, and it's surprising to me why she is underrated. But at the same time, Frozen Citron is also underrated. I think it's just people have this mindset that damage is always better than less damage but a gimmick, but I would argue that if that gimmick is good enough, then that character can sacrifice a few points of damage. And she's one of them because, she's also a charge character, and she has crazy splash as well as crazy damage as well as crazy charge shots. She is not the character that everyone usually complains about. And it's funny because people see her as so mediocre, it honestly somewhat offends me that people do. She's good, she's fun, and she feels powerful. Period.
It's funny how dumb you are.
You know who else feels very powerful? The Rugby Star. Say what you want about this guy, but I really, really love playing him. And what's funny is that I actually share the same reasons as another YouTuber for liking Rugby Star. And those reasons are actually pretty simple, but because I love this character so much, I actually kind of want to go in detail about it. So he does decent damage. He has an okay fire rate, not as good as, like the original or Hockey Star, but still pretty alright, all things considered. But my absolute favorite thing about him, besides his decent damage and splash damage, is the fact that not only does he feel powerful, but he is powerful. Because he can pretty much work at any range. It's kind of funny, there is an all-star meant to fight enemies at long ranges, but Rugby Star does it better. Yeah, sure, he has quite a bit of damage fall off, but all things considered, it's not too bad, because it's really easy to land shots at a distance, because his shots travel in a straight line and have barely any spread or anything like that, making it incredibly difficult to miss a shot. Basically the same as, barbecue corn, plus he's got splash damage to make up for it. All things considered, he is a very easygoing all-star. He feels powerful, he's got consistent damage, and consistent range and accuracy. which is something you cannot say for most All-Stars. Most All-Stars are close range or mid-range, sometimes they're mid-range. And then there's, of course, Golf Star, which is specifically mid to long range. But this guy just really works in any range. Like, I don't think people realize just how good he actually is, while also being fun. Because, it's not exactly like you're shooting tickle bullets at the enemies. You're doing very good damage. If I had to say, the one problem people usually have with him is his fire rate, which I will agree is not the best. But, it's not like you still can't pump out consistent damage. Just look at the clips I'm showing you. He's doing pretty consistent damage, fast enough for the number to stay on screen long enough for it to stop building up, which is something I like. And up close, where obviously he shines the most, he is really, really good. Crazy damage, honestly. Not as crazy as the regular All-Star, but still really, really good in his own right. And people don't give enough credit for that when they really should. Because, call me crazy, but 13 damage is definitely nothing to sneeze at. He can basically just shred anyone at any range due to, his damage and his accuracy, meaning he can take down tanks, he can take down snipers, he can take down close-range duelists, basically all of them. He is all around good in almost every single way, whereas other All-Stars that I like sorta fumble in that way, this guy does not. Although I still prefer Hockey Star more. I played him once in Garden Warfare 1 and then didn't stop playing him, I never looked back. But still, Rugby Star is really good. More people need to be playing him, because he is too good for this game to just be undermined the way that he is. He's way too good. I'm gonna say right now, one of the most underrated characters in the game besides Frost Rose. This is what Golf Star mains wish they could be, because he is just better than Golf Star in my opinion. Plus, this weapon skin that he has is actually really cool looking. I think it really fits the aesthetic for the weapon. However, there is a character that doesn't really feel powerful that I also like playing. And that is the Moto X Star. Now, I definitely know that this one is going to be considered a hot take because, there's Goalie Star, who just does everything better than him. Except for one aspect of Motocross Star, and that is the fact that he moves faster. I know I sound crazy. I know I do. But it's just, he's alright. I don't really hate playing him despite his mediocre damage output, and I will admit it is mediocre. He's got quite a bit of spread. He's got quite a bit of an arc to his attack. He's not really the best, but he's fast and he does semi-good damage while also being able to stop enemies from using their abilities. And I know that Goalie Star can do the same, minus the speed boost. I know that. But I think it might be due to the fact that he's a little bit more accurate than Goalie Star, so you don't have to be as precise compared to when you use Goalie Star. Unlike Goalie Star, you don't have to zoom in order to do your best when playing this character, which is something I appreciate, especially considering he's the speed guy, so you need to get in and out of fights quickly. Look, I know I'm grasping at straws here. I definitely know that. Even if I was trying to convince people to like this character, I definitely know that I wouldn't, because he's just not all that good. He's generally weaker than another All-Star who already does the same thing, but I just enjoy him too much to disregard playing him. That's all I really have to say about him. I'm only now realizing just how much I talk about precision when I talk about characters I like. Considering that fact, I might as well talk about the cactuses, specifically Camo Cactus. Now, I definitely know that this one is a hot take, because oftentimes people will say that Camo Cactus gets outclassed by every other cactus in the game. And I'm here to say that that's just not true. Oftentimes, the arguments people will use to try and say that Camo Cactus is bad is usually things like her ammo count, her reload speed, and the amount of damage she does. And I'm here to sort of disprove that. For starters, her ammo situation is a little bit crappy, especially since she doesn't get an ammo upgrade. I will admit to that, but at the same time, you can kill every single regular class in the game besides a Z-Mech with your entire clip. Now, usually the second thing people don't like about her is her reload speed, but she's a sniper. Reloading isn't really something she has to worry about, considering the fact that she's supposed to be at a distance, meaning she doesn't need to reload super fast all the time anyways. Finally, one thing that's often brought up about is her damage. Now, I will admit that before you get the damage upgrade, this is a perfectly valid argument. Her damage is on the lower side of the cactuses, especially without it. However, with the damage upgrade, she becomes really, really good. Oftentimes people will compare her to Zen Cactus and Future Cactus when it comes to outputting damage, and to be honest, Camo Cactus has a leg up on them. Cause think about it, Camo Cactus can two-shot any character in the game, regardless of what type of shot she's shooting, regardless of how long she's been charging it up, and regardless of how many times you miss a certain shot when you're using her. This is something that the other two cactuses sort of have problems with. Now, I'm not here to say that Future Cactus or Zen Cactus is bad by any means. No, they are both really, really good. But oftentimes people will say that Future and Zen are better than Camo for those reasons, and it just doesn't really make too much sense for me for the reasons I provided. Because, like, she doesn't require any special gimmick in order to two-shot most characters in the game, by the way. It's just confusing to me why not too many people like her. Although if I had to guess, most likely it's due to the fact that she has so many things going against her. But even with all these different things, you can still pop off with her. I will truly say that this character is the Sonic TD Amy Rose of this game, to where if you're not good at her, it truly is a skill issue. It has nothing to do with a character being bad. It really just is a skill issue. Although I will still admit that an ammo upgrade would do her wonders. Even if it only increased the ammo that she has by 1, that means she could kill 3 people in a single clip, and I think that would be nice. Also, another thing that she has that's sort of a leg up on another character is that it's way harder to tell at a glance where you're getting shot from when she's shooting at you, because, you know, she doesn't necessarily have any sort of glowing particles or a very lit up body like, you know, the other two do. The other two shoot glowing large projectiles, and she just shoots spikes that sort of have a bit of a leafy green tracer effect, but not nearly as noticeable as the other two. Now let's talk about Camo Cactus's polar opposite, the Bandit Cactus. Now, in my opinion, Bandit Cactus is the most underrated cactus in the game. There also is Power Cactus, but I personally find Bandit to be a little bit more fun. You know, there's actually something I want to bring up. She's actually underrated in the same way that Frozen Citron is. She does something that another character does, but only that other character gets the praise for it. So you guys probably know how Commando P works. He's supposed to be the foot soldier on plans for the pea shooter, and he sort of fails in this due to the fact that he has such a harsh damage drop-off compared to the foot soldier. But I would honestly say that when it comes to acting like a foot soldier, Bandit Cactus does better. Her damage fall-off isn't all that bad considering the fact that she's a cactus and everything, and she's really good at medium and even longer distances, and she's good at close range as well, due to her, you know, spammability and such. I will say her accuracy does sort of fall off, which is why I compared her to Camo Cactus, because Camo Cactus requires accuracy and has a very low ammo count, whereas Bandit Cactus has the highest ammo count and doesn't require nearly as much precision to be good. And honestly, the amount of damage she can do really fast is impressive to say the least. Sure, it's not mind-blowing, but it's still really good on its own. Now, she is still a cactus, so that doesn't mean that you should try to close quarters an enemy, but at the same time, it's not necessarily like it's the worst idea to do with her. And to me, she's easily one of the most satisfying characters to play in the whole game. Because of it. Because of, how crazy she can be when it comes to damage and spamming. Now, I will admit that the spread on her needles can be a little bit difficult at times to get a hang of, but you're supposed to zoom in with her, so that's sort of a you problem if you don't. Like I said, she's still supposed to be a cactus. You should still be trying to use her at a comfortable distance, which I believe people often get confused about when talking about her. They think that she's this ultra super cool close-up character, but no, she is perfectly mid-range. And I think that this is oftentimes a turn-off for multiple people that like playing cactus, because they often think that you either play her at long range, and then there are those weirdos that like playing more close range. To be honest though, the thing I love about her the most is her ammo count. You can really be spammy with her if you want. It's not exactly like there's anything stopping you from doing so, because, that's how she's supposed to be. She is supposed to be the spammy cactus. And I like characters that are super precise, and I like characters that are super spammy. There's not really much of an in-between for me in that type of scenario, because the thing is that if you have a character that can be really precise and do high amounts of damage, then they have quite the skill ceiling. If you have a character that doesn't require a significant amount of skill to use, then they can be fun if they're really spammy. Of course, there are also really spammable characters like the Tails doll, who is definitely not fun to play with or against. But Bandit Cactus is an exception to this. She is spammy and fun. And once again, the fact that people usually don't bring her up when they talk about Foot Soldier-esque characters is really criminal to me, because she basically is just Foot Soldier Cactus. Good at any range, but best at mid-range, has pretty consistent damage, has a high ammo count, all these things about her scream Foot Soldier. But I guess Cactus as a whole is not considered interesting by a good chunk of the community. Otherwise, I know that people would be going crazy over her. But now let's back up a bit and talk about a character that I actually referenced at the start of the video, that being Zen Cactus. Now, I will admit that this isn't really much of a hot take. After all, you do see somebody else playing in this clip besides me, but I do think she's not played enough, and she's just way too good in her own right to not be played enough. I'm surprised that she isn't considered the best cactus outside of Future. Oftentimes, people will refer to other cactuses being the best, specifically second best. Now, to talk about what I like about her, I like the fact that since she sort of uses a big, powerful energy ball, she doesn't need to be precise with headshots in order to do decent damage. I like that with her. I also like the fact that her damage scales up to a pretty high amount, allowing you to do a pretty large amount of damage overall. And also, I like the fact that her design is, super cool looking. The orbs and I want to say magenta. It's a little bit purpley as well. It's difficult for me to specifically call out certain colors, but yeah, I really like her design and all that. Now, all of these factors do sort of make it really easy to know where she is, but that's the thing, is that she's not really supposed to be hidden all that well in the first place anyways, so I don't see that as much of a problem when playing her. I also think that people oftentimes underestimate the amount of damage she does. It's still crazy, honestly. I think it usually is because people are so used to her doing not really too much damage at the beginning, and therefore think that they can take her, when in reality, she will whoop ya. Because she sort of messes with your brain, because the amount of damage that she's about to do to you compared to what she just did to you is not the same, and you're definitely going to feel it. So if I had to guess, that's most likely the reason. If that's not though, then I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure that's the reason. Also, I know that it's very minimal, but I do like the fact that she has splash damage, and I like the fact that the splash radius for each of her shots gets bigger the more that you shoot. I like that because it can help you with situations like that, because I definitely wasn't about to hit that imp, but the splash damage helped. Even if it wasn't by too much, it still helped. Since we're on the subject of splash damage and splash radius, let's talk about the P shooters, specifically Fire P. Now, Fire P is an interesting case because he truly is what Barbecue Corn isn't, which is a character that's just worse in most ways, except he also does fire damage. And honestly, I'm fine with that. I don't think enough people realize just how powerful splash damage plus an effect is, and in most scenarios, having some sort of effect along with splash damage can make a character really annoying to fight against, especially a character that can, jump really high, get to high altitudes and just rain down pain. Yes, I know he does significantly less damage. Yes, I know he has significantly less splash. However, you can't really properly fight against a character who can, jump around at really high speeds as well as do fire damage and splash damage all at the same time. It's super annoying and super hard to deal with, and that's why I enjoyed playing him. Because, like I said, scientists really help their team, which means that most of the time, the fire damage will take effect. Because when you think about it, this guy is basically just the Scorch Shot. Because he does less damage than the original, but he's super annoying to deal with. He's got splash damage and fire damage, all that jazz. He's really just the Scorch Shot. And to be honest, there's not much more to say about him besides that. He's just a pea shooter that does less damage and does fire damage and all that jazz. He's alright for what he is. Now let's talk about the only other pea shooter going on this list, which is Commando P. To be honest, there's not too many pea shooters that are going to be on this list because the more that I think about it, every other pea shooter that I don't like has their fans and I'm just not the biggest fan of them. And all the ones that I do like, besides these two, are beloved by the community. So, I guess there's Ice P. I do somewhat like Ice P, but the same thing can be said about them, what can be said for Fire P, so I don't really feel the need to repeat myself. But anyways, moving on to Commando P, one of the many reasons I love playing him is he's different, and because he's different, he adds a new interesting playstyle that I somewhat enjoy, being a semi-automatic pea shooter. He's really good at dealing with parrots, he's really good at dealing with characters that are unaware of the situation. He's really good as a pick character, whereas most of the other pea shooters are good at crowds. The only pea shooters that really fit the category of pick character are Agent P and Law P. I'm not a big fan of Law P, but I do love Agent P. But the reason why I love Commando P, despite being generally considered to be a worse pick character, is that he's just different enough from Law P and Agent P for me to have fun with him. A lot of people often say that his damage fall-off is what makes him kind of mediocre, but I would actually say it's his accuracy that makes him on the slightly mediocre side. Because if he had pinpoint accuracy, like some of the other characters do, or at least better accuracy than he usually does, I would honestly love playing him more. Because the thing is that, yeah sure, the damage fall-off is pretty bad, but it's not so bad. It's not like god-awful or anything, it's just okay. And I think a lot of people blow it out of proportion. But the spread on his P's is god-awful. If there was anything I would do to change him, it would be making the spread a little bit less worse. That's often why I play him up close. He is specifically an up-close pick class character, which is why he fails in comparison to the Foot Soldier, because the Foot Soldier can be good at just about any range. But besides that, he's not as mediocre as everybody believes. While he failed to do the thing he was supposed to, he's not the worst. He's just somewhat mediocre in what he tries to do, but generally okay in other instances. And to be honest, even if his damage fall off and his spread wasn't all that bad, he would still just pale in comparison to the monstrosity that is Electro P, and also, one of my personal favorites, Plasma P. Plasma P is just too good of a charge character. On the subject of charge characters, there are actually two that I want to talk about that I think don't get enough recognition for just how good they can be, with the first one being Cosmic Brains. Now, I definitely know that this one is going to be a hot take because I see nothing but hate for this guy most of the time. But occasionally I will see somebody that says something good about him, but it's very rare. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why. Like, I understand he's got his flaws. I'm not saying that he's better than the regular. He definitely ain't. I don't think anything beats Reg Soup Brains besides Potty Brains. Because even then, Toxic Brains is good, but he has his flaws. So really, when it boils down to how good one character is compared to another, I would say that, Reg and Potty are definitely better. But does that mean that Cosmic Brains is bad? I wouldn't say so. He's got his flaws, but many characters do. But I don't think people realize just how powerful he can be, especially once you get the damage upgrade. Now, I understand that his first punch is pitiful, it is, but from personal experience, he is one of the easiest characters to learn how to use the second punch properly. Most charge characters, it can be a little bit tedious to properly use the second shot. That is, unless you're in a situation where you just need to press the fire button, but usually that comes from instinct of me wanting to use a third charge and an enemy being my face, and then suddenly not using the third charge. But yeah, compared to other characters, learning to incorporate the second charge into your fighting style when playing him is not as difficult as you think it is. And to be completely honest, his damage isn't too much worse. For example, if you actually manage to do a fully charged shot, you can kill certain characters faster than the regular Super Brains can, which is nice. He obviously isn't as good as Reg Super Brains, but he still is good in his own right. He's got lots of quirks that make him really fun to play. He's got that, singular fighting style, and I think we can all agree that the people that try to play him less stealthily compared to the way that people play normal Super Brains just doesn't really make too much sense to me. Because these people will complain about him being bad, but then they'll play him the way he's not supposed to be played. Think about it. Most of the time, when people play Super Brains, they're all over the place, they're attacking multiple people at once. But when it comes to other Super Brainses, specifically Cosmic Brains, you're supposed to take on single targets. And I see so many people that are trying to take on groups with this guy. And it's just, unless you're about to go in with a fully charged shot, you should not be taking on multiple targets. And really the only reason why I'd suggest taking on multiple targets is if you want to try and get multiple black hole kills. And also, to mention the black hole a little bit, I do think it's nice that he can do something no other zombie can do. It's actually, surprisingly, a better gimmick than you'd like to believe. It's not the best, but still, it's a cool gimmick nonetheless, as it technically makes him the only zombie that can confirm kills. To be honest though, regardless of what I say, I do understand why people don't like playing him. That beam damage mixed with the fact that you can make people unrevivable, mixed with the fact that it's not too difficult to incorporate the charge shot, plus technically, being able to get multiple black holes on multiple people is a really cool thing. Hitting somebody, doing lots of damage to them, and then just evaporating the person behind them, like what you saw me do with that corn and that citron. It's just really fun to me. And I don't care what other people think. Cosmic Brains is just fun. People have been giving more attention to Electro Citron, but I also think Cosmic Brains deserves lots of that attention as well. Plus, a fully charged shot allows you to get a shared kill on most characters in the game. Besides Torchwood and Citron, every other character you can get it a shared on, doing a fully charged shot, which is nice. It's also got some incredible range. But yeah, I love Cosmic Brains. I will never stop loving him, even if other people don't.
Wait, what?
Now let's talk about the other charged character, that being Mystic Flower. I used to play her a little bit back in the first game, but in the second game I played her so much more. I'm pretty sure she was my first master, with the second being the regular, the stock sunflower, and I can't get over just how good she is. Like, think about it. Look at this damage that I'm doing on screen. Look at how consistent the damage is, and look at the amount of damage she does with her charge shots. This is a support character that can heal herself. She is a backline character, and yet she can do, like, I'm pretty sure 72 damage at max. That is insane. And the amount of ammo she can hold is actually really good as well. It allows you to use so many charge shots while still having regular shots. It's definitely way better than Electro Switch on, that's for sure, who does, I'm pretty sure, the exact same amount of damage, but has even a larger clip size, but for some reason, his fully charged shots take more ammo. Now, I will fully admit that Mystic Flower does have one pretty big weakness, and said weakness being the fact that it takes forever to charge up a fully charged shot, and by then, most of the time, people would have been able to easily take you down to your low health. But I counter the argument with, she is a character that is played supportively. You should not be up in the enemy's face in a fight. If you're really in that much of a bind anyways, you should just use the regular shots. Don't waste time using the charge shots. The charge shots are an alternative rather than being a necessity, unlike some characters. And that's what I love so much about her. The fact that her regular shots and her charge shots, and even sometimes her secondary shot, are all powerful in their own right. Considering the fact that there are so many characters with charge abilities in this game that I love, that the community either also loves or hates, makes me think that I just love having options. Because when you think about it, charge characters are sort of like having a secondary and a primary weapon, which is not a thing in this game. You only have your primary, and you only have abilities. So characters with charge abilities sort of fill that gap, that hole inside of me, which I do personally really like. Because Garden Warfare 2 ain't like Marvel Rivals or TF2, where you have a primary and a secondary. Now you just have your primary, your abilities, and that's it. But yeah, the only bad thing I have to say about her is the fact that her charge shots sort of take forever to charge up, but she is a support character, so I don't see it as the worst thing in the world. You know, since we're now on the subject of healers, let's might as well just talk about all of them, Scientist and Sunflowers included. And no better place to start than with the Metal Petal. Now, I definitely know that this one is extremely disliked by a majority of the community, and, unlike a good chunk of the characters, obviously not all of them, she does have a pretty big weakness, that being her movement speed. However, I do not necessarily find the lack of movement speed to be the worst thing in the world. Her being more tanky means that she can support characters without having to worry about putting herself in as much danger. Like, think about it. She doesn't really have to worry, too much at least, compared to the other sunflowers, about putting herself out in the open. She can just put herself out in the open and take significantly more hits than other characters can. Now, if she was like really slow, like super duper slow, I would agree that she's kind of bad, but she's not that slow, all things considered. There's still plenty of characters that you can either keep up with, or characters that move slower than you. So it's not necessarily like every character is going to be outpacing you. And even then, she's more of like a defensive character, so you shouldn't be trying to wander off to help your team. Now, I will admit that there is one thing that I do not like about her that's pretty bad, and that is the fact that she deals significantly less damage. I honestly don't really know why she does significantly less damage. She's supposed to be a tank class. I will admit that kind of ruins it for her. But it's not bad enough to where I hate it. It's not terrible in its spread, and there are definitely characters in this game that do worse damage than her. So I don't necessarily see it as the worst thing in the world compared to many other types of weapons in this game. Not only that, but Metal Petal has a unique gimmick that none of the other sunflowers have. Let me show you. Yeah, she can survive a ZPG. Anyways, let's move on to one of the other sunflower variants. This one isn't as disliked compared to Metal Petal, but it's still very much one you don't see very often. And that one is the alien flower. Now I'm gonna say this right here, and I'm gonna say it right now. She is incredibly underrated for a sunflower, besides Mystic Flower. She's got good damage, she's got a big cloud, that cloud also deals good damage, just really good in general. You can do good damage, while also being able to hit an enemy behind a wall or behind any form of protection. Her damage bypasses certain armors. It's honestly crazy to me that she is not as universally loved as other sunflowers. But if I had to assume the reason why she isn't, it's most likely related to the fact that as a whole, she just doesn't do as much like direct, continuous damage compared to some of the other characters. Whereas with the regular sunflower, you can just keep doing continuous damage over and over and over and over again. And now that I think about it, that's probably the reason why the stock sunflower and the stuffy sunflower are so well loved by the community, because they have incredible accuracy, do decent damage, have a decent fire rate, and stuffy flower has the additive of also being able to heal herself after killing an enemy, which the healing can also apply to your teammates, but I think most people agree that you use it mostly on yourself when you try to, before your teammates steal your health from you. Although, personally, people really sleep on Alien Flower. I'm just saying, the damage is really good. She's easily the best particle character, way better than Park Ranger, and way better than Toxic Citron. That's for sure. And while her damage and fire rate aren't necessarily the best, up close she can be a real monster, especially considering how difficult it is to actually get away from the cloud due to it having a larger hitbox than other cloud abilities in the game. Plus, her initial shot still does pretty good damage, way more than any of the other sunflowers, which is pretty nice. She doesn't have the DPS to back it up like the others. But that does not mean by any means that she is bad in any sort of way, and she should be played more. She is the underrated sunflower, besides Mystic Flower. Now let's move on to the final healer that I have chosen for this list, although specifically, it's more of a playstyle rather than a specific character, so I'll just get right into it. Let's talk about Computer Scientist. Now I know that this is going to be a little bit confusing to those that have played the game, because along with Astronaut, Computer Scientist is generally considered to be one of the best characters of the Scientist class as a whole, so why exactly would I say that he is a good character when a lot of people already unanimously agree that he's a good character? Well, it's not his character, but rather the playstyle I have with him, and the playstyle I have with Scientist as a whole. You see, unlike most people that play him, I actually like playing Scientist supportively.
Oh god, no!
Now I know that sounds crazy, as considering how powerful Scientists can be, especially at close range, most of the time, people will normally play him offensively, instead of actually like a support character. However, the reason why I love playing him as a support character is because it's so fun watching the little numbers go up. And the thing is that Scientist is really good when it comes to reviving and helping teammates, what with his heal beam and his heal bomb. And to be honest, I don't think people realize just how powerful switching between attacking and supporting the team really is. You can revive like 3 people in only a few seconds, heal another one to full health, and then get back into the fight. not needing to fight constantly means you can help your team more, which means that you can lower the count when playing team deathmatch, and help your team defend the point better, rather than just going in and killing a couple people and then dying, because most of the time, scientist players don't get any more than like 5-6 kills. Usually that's where the kill streak ends, if they get any kill streaks. And while what I just said applies to every single scientist, the reason why I chose computer scientist the most is because he's actually the perfect example of mixing it up between a support character and an attacking character. Because you can get a couple kills here and there, help your team, and then once you get that 5 kill streak, you can go on a rampage, and then go back to supporting your team and getting a few kills here and there. So I don't really have a transition that I can think of at the moment, so, Power Chomper. Now this is definitely a character that receives very little, if absolutely no, love, and I can kind of see why, and I don't really know why as well. It's sort of in that weird middle ground. Well, the reason why I love Power Chomper is because he doesn't have any stupid health or speed debuffs. He's just the regular Chomper, but with a different weapon, which is, nice. However, the absolute best thing about him is that his weapon isn't tied to any sort of stupid gimmick. Yeah, sure, he does chain damage, and that chain damage might be the worst of any and all electric characters, but it's more his base damage that I want to talk about. He does 10 damage, 11 if you get the damage buff. And the thing is that there's another character that does that much damage. gw2. He is also a close-range character that has quite a bit of health, and has a stun, and has good mobility. Now if I had to assume why he isn't as loved as gw2, it's most likely because Power Chomper is a Chomper, aka a class that is not well loved by anyone in the community for that matter, except like hardcore Chomper players. Which is why I want to shine some light on him. Power Chomper is deceptively powerful. Being able to do 11 damage at a close range while also having a stun is incredibly powerful, due to the fact that there are almost no other characters that can do 11 damage besides him. The only other character that can match up with him is gw2, and that's why I compared them together. But at the same time, gw2 is also a character that has less health and a slightly worse stun. So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to close range, continuous damage, I'd say that Power Chomper does really well. Of course, like I said before, his chain damage is very much lacking. But the thing is that his direct damage, his base damage, makes up for it, because it's just obscenely powerful. And it's even more powerful when you do the tap gimmick instead of just firing normally, when you rapidly press the fire button, which causes the spray attack to do more damage faster than if you were just to hold it down normally. This is actually a bug that has never been fixed before. It used to not exist in the first game, but the thing is that for some reason they just let it happen again. I don't really know why. But yeah, I like the fact that he can do 11 damage and that there's nothing that really gets in his way. Because with Toxic Chomper and Fire Chomper, yeah, Fire Chomper is good, don't get me wrong. He is very much well liked, and he's good in my opinion, especially in the first game, not as much in the second, but the thing about Fire Chomper is that he can be stopped easily by healing properties, and while scientists may not heal their teammates very much, they very much will heal themselves. So it becomes a bit of a problem. But yeah, Power Chomper is good because pretty much nothing is holding him back. He's got good damage. His Chain Lightning may suck, but he's got a good stun because he's a Chomper. Of course, he's also a Chomper, so he sort of falls a bit in that regard, but he's definitely a character that is overlooked by the community as a whole. So, Vampire Chomper. This chomper is not as underrated as power chompers, but definitely underrated enough to be talked about in this video. Usually in the discussion of speed versus health, when it comes to characters, usually speed outclasses health, but that usually applies to fast-paced games like TF2. Garden Warfare 2 and Garden Warfare 1, respectively, are not as fast-paced. Personally, I feel like, while not being as talked about, is just as powerful as Hot Red Chomper in his own way. Vampire Chomper has his place, it can just be a little bit difficult to find it. And what is that place exactly? Well, he's supposed to be played like an actual stealth character. Most of the chompers, you can usually just run up to the enemy, kill them, and then move on to the next. And this is technically how you play Hot Rod, but with Chomper, stealth is always the optimal path to go, taking out one character and then slowly whittling them down over time. Because he can't do chain kills in the same way that Hot Red can. While Hot Red can do chains quickly, Vampire Chomper can do them for longer, and with less worry about being caught out, because he has more health than Hot Red Chomper, and he can keep healing himself even in battle. And that's where the problem lies, because he isn't exactly a quiet character. He makes quite a lot of noise, both in his attacks, his quote-unquote voice lines, and of course, his burrow, his goop, his chomps, and the loud noise that his vampirism effect makes. So usually, the best way to play him is more like a disruptor, where you take advantage of somebody that is being distracted. Now, most of the time, stealth characters usually can just walk in, kill somebody that's alone, or maybe kill a few people that aren't paying attention, but you need somebody to be paying attention to your enemies if you want to use this guy effectively, whereas with Hot Red Chomper you can't. And I think a lot of people that usually like playing Chomper believe that it's okay to just run into the fight, but the thing is that you're never going to be able to take advantage of his abilities if you just straight up run into the fight, because that extra health ain't gonna do you too much. It'll help, but it ain't gonna give you everything that you want, at least not compared to Hot Rod Chomper's ultimate speed, allowing him to pretty much be anywhere at once. But yeah, more people need to be playing Vampire Chomper. He's really good in my opinion. Okay, so for this next part, I was going to talk about Twilight Chomper, but then I accidentally ended up deleting the footage that I had of him, and even then it wasn't that good. I didn't have any good footage of Twilight Chomper, honestly, because I kept either getting steamrolled or just the footage was not very good. But to be honest, he's not really underrated anymore. Not only are there tons of people coming out and saying that he's actually good despite being a Chomper, these three are a good example of that, but he's also receiving more love from the community. And, well, to those that are confused as to why he's receiving this much love, let me explain it in the simplest way possible. He is second to third best at everything. I don't think you realize just how good that is. Most chompers excel at one thing, or excel at nothing. This guy almost excels at everything. And that's just how good he is. He almost excels at nearly every single thing he does. And that's what makes him so good. Because it's rare to find characters that can just excel so well in almost everything to the best. Because he doesn't have the highest health, he doesn't have the highest damage, he isn't the fastest, but damn is his warp good, and all of those things are still really good in their own right. Like, his damage, when you have the damage upgrades on, is crazy. And what's even better is that his upgrades aren't as straightforward. With most variants, it's a straightforward upgrade system. You got one type of upgrade, and then another type of upgrade, and then another type of upgrade, and that's it. You run those three upgrades. But with Twilight Chomper, there's actually a few upgrades that you can change that sort of differentiate the way that you play him and also make him more fun. Like, there's not one good upgrade for him, there are multiple. Now that we have made it to the home stretch, there are only 3 characters left to cover, those being 3 foot soldiers, starting with Camo Ranger. So I have heard people say before that he is underrated, but considering the fact that there are still plenty of characters that are considered underrated and are still underrated afterwards, means that obviously he isn't underrated enough to be picked up by the community and loved by many, so that's why I come in. The reason why I love the Camo Ranger so much is because Foot Soldier does well at any range, but he can struggle a bit at long range. And this guy sort of fills that role, doing considerably good damage, having a good clip size, being able to combo well with ZPG, because much like regular Foot Soldier, while ZPG works good in any range, I think we can all agree that long range is its best advantage. So a long range Foot Soldier with a long ranged ability just makes it all the better. And what's funny is that he isn't even really that bad up close, or at mid-range really. He's not really so much as a sniper so much as he excels in sniping, which is exactly what the regular Foot Soldier does. It excels in pretty much everything, but that doesn't mean it still can't struggle a little bit. And the same can be said for Camo Ranger. He's just a little bit more gimmicky, but I mean, come on. Gimmicky characters doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad character. It just means that they have more to them, and that sometimes they're stronger in certain situations than others. And I think that really just goes to show how powerful he is, that he's not to be trifled with, even up close, despite being a sniper character. And while the Cactuses struggle up close with most of their attacks, the Camo Ranger is actually much easier fighting up close compared to most of them, which is really funny, especially considering the fact that he is also supposed to be a sniper character. But I think that just goes to show how powerful he is. Not to mention that, much like many of the characters on this list, his weapon is very satisfying to use. If I had to say if there was a downside to it, probably the only downside is the firing rate, but once again, it is supposed to be a sniper character. It still fires pretty fast though, at least compared to most of the cactuses, or cacti, whatever you want to call it. Plus, I know what I'm about to say has absolutely nothing to do with his character stats, but I really like the way that his rocket launcher looks. I know that, obviously, like I just said, it has nothing to do with his actual stats, but I just really like looking at it. I don't know why. It just looks nice to me. Although, as much as I do love him, I also understand why others don't, because he is very simplistic. But simplicity isn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, that's what the next soldier, Scuba Soldier, shares. You know, as the big man himself once put it, there isn't really that much Scuba Soldier rep in this game anymore. Hell, I don't even know if there was to begin with. He's always just been that character that only a few people talk about, and usually when they do, it's because of his insane splash, and it's usually in a negative light. Which, as many have stated before, it is pretty fair and justified to be upset when fighting against one of these guys. But the thing is that I don't really see anybody complaining about him too much. It's only when they actually fight against him, but he's sort of just always in the back of their mind until they actually fight him. So as far as I'm concerned, he's not that annoying, because he's not like an EP where you're just hoping not to encounter one in one of your games. It's only when you actually start fighting him that he becomes a problem. But what is it like when you're actually on the side of playing him? Well, I would argue he's pretty fun. His splash damage is really good, and his direct hit damage is also really good, and it makes him really fun to play. It's like playing a shotgun character. Well, more like a single shot shotgun character, since he only shoots one shot. But yeah, even if he has a bit of a harder time killing certain enemies compared to the regular Foot Soldier, usually more tanky enemies, he's still really fun to play. Just getting in somebody's face, doing massive damage to them. It's pretty much the same feeling as Tank Commander. And another thing I like about him is the fact that you can kill low health classes faster than the regular Foot Soldier can. But yeah, his splash damage gimmicks are as fun to use as they are annoying to fight against. And I will live on this hill and die on this hill, believing that he is one of the best foot soldiers in the game. Obviously not as good as Reg Foot Soldier, but still a very solid pick for most people, and very underrated, much like Camera Ranger. Really, the only thing I don't like about him is the fact that his special gimmick, the one thing he can do that nobody else can do, is sort of underwhelming. And the thing is that it's not a problem with the character, it's a problem with the game itself. Because of spotting icons, you're rarely ever going to need to have the ability to see an enemy through walls, considering the fact that the icon's always hovering above their head. Honestly, if this game ever gets updated, those should be removed. Not only would it be a buff to Scuba Soldier, but it would also make the game more fun, especially when you're playing as certain classes in the game. But that's just my opinion. And now, we have made it to the home stretch, with only one character left to talk about. Only one more character to truly conclude this incredibly exhausting project that has been in development hell for about a month now. Let us talk about the one, the only, General Supremo. I know, it sounds completely crazy. But just for a moment, spare your pathetic laughter, and let me explain. This guy is genuinely some of the most fun I have ever had playing this game, and the first game, period. I like him so much to the point that he is going to be the only one to get a single background soundtrack just for him. General Supremo is, without a single doubt in my mind, one of, if not the most overhated characters in this entire game. He is so overhated that honestly, it surprises me. And I'm going to be spending these last few minutes on this video that I have explaining exactly why he's overhated. For starters, he is overhated because he is not considered to be as good as the regular foot soldier, but there is almost no character that can compete with the regular foot soldier. And secondly, he is different enough from the regular foot soldier to justify his existence, in that he can be fun in his own right. And that's the thing, is that he is different from the regular foot soldier, aka you need to play him differently, aka it's not going to be the same as what you normally like. But thirdly, the most important thing about him is that he is meant to be played like an all-star. His damage and spread are honestly not that bad when you actually put him up close, and his fire rate and his ability to not have to reload every 5 seconds, because most foot soldiers have that problem, is really, really good, especially since he is supposed to be played up close, really fast and personal. You don't have time for reloading, but him not needing to reload is very good, and having a fast fire rate makes him even better. And in terms of damage, it's only really a 3-point difference. It's not that much when you really think about it. I'm also gonna say right now, it's not a bad thing that you can't be as aggressive with him compared to the other foot soldiers, because he still has good mobility and good abilities, and it's honestly not that hard to get around. Sure, yeah, you can't jump or run as fast as the other foot soldiers, but the thing is that most of the time, aiming is important, therefore most of the time, you won't be jumping around. And if you are jumping around, you're basically in their face, aka General Supremo's best range. So, the way I see it, not needing to be as aggressive with him is not necessarily a bad thing. Just because he isn't as aggressive does not necessarily mean that he is a bad character, it just means he's different. And he is really good mid-lines. Like, he can stay in the mid-lines, do some chip damage, then get up close, then do good damage, then go backwards. The other foot soldiers can do this much faster, but him doing it slower isn't necessarily a full-on bad thing. And a lot of people will brush over the infinite ammo mechanic, but as long as you're decent with actually managing overheating, and you have the overheat and overheat penalty upgrade, it's really not as bad as people believe it to be, which means that you can actually get in chain fights more than you can with the regular foot soldier. And if he didn't have movement restrictions, he would definitely be probably the best character for chain killing. Him and Sky Trooper. Now look, I'm not saying that he's this absolute beast that can destroy anyone at close range, but what I am saying is you should give him a try every once in a while. He's not as bad as you or the YouTubers that hate him claim to be. Well, that's every variant in the game that I like that is either disliked or seen as a nothing burger by the whole community. I hope you enjoyed this video. It definitely took way longer than I hoped it would. Honestly, if it wasn't for everything that's happened to me, it probably would have come out sooner, but hey, life is just like that sometimes. I would appreciate criticism. Any criticism is good. So if you do have one, especially with the microphone settings, because I don't know which one is better, I would appreciate if you left a comment. But besides that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you some other time.